Welcome to the PJ Hoop Podcast. I'm your host, PJ, and if this is your very first time checking out my podcast, I want to let you guys know this is not an NBA podcast. This is a basketball podcast. So in my podcast, I like to cover the NBA mainly, but I also a little bit touch on college. I'll touch on high school a little bit, and also I'll touch on international basketball. Now, if you're interested in specifically that content and seeing how my mind works in those areas, episode 16, you can go ahead and check that out. That's where I'm talking about kind of my college basketball season preview, giving you some of my top prospects that I'll be keeping my eyes on. Not necessarily the 30 best prospects, but just 30 prospects that I really liked. And then also I gave you 10 international prospects that I would be keeping my eyes on also. But then also if you're interested in just internationally, what I have to say, go ahead and check out episode 5. I'll leave a link up in the corner for you to check that out. In that specific episode, I'll be talking a little bit more about international. But week in and week out, mainly it's the NBA podcast. And I want to give you guys the 4 segments that I go over week in to week out. Number 1 being PJ's Echelon. Now in PJ's Echelon, it's essentially my power rankings. And within my power rankings, it's a progressive list because I'm not a perfect man, but I am a progressive man. So just keep that in mind when I go through that segment. And the parameters that I use within that segment, I like to go over the team's record, statistically where they sit, the eye test, but also their strength of schedule. So that'll be my first segment coming up here shortly. Another segment that I like to go over is a segment I like to call What's New. Now, What's New, essentially, it's me giving you some type of NBA news, some type of NBA statistical record that may have been broken, or just some news, or just me ranting also as well. So that's What's New. Another segment that I go over is a segment I like to call Games of the Week. Now, in Games of the Week, essentially, I'm going over games of some type of significance or games that I just really enjoyed watching. Keep in mind, I only do about 2 to 3 games a week, and that's just because I don't want to make these episodes an hour and a half long. And also, like, I watch more than 2 games out of the week, just so you guys know. So that's Games of the Week. My last segment is a segment I like to call Rookie Talk. Now, in Rookie Talk, essentially, it's what it sounds like. I'm talking about today's NBA's rookies, but also I started 2 weeks ago ingratiating my college and international and high school segment called In the Lab. So that, In the Lab, and also Rookie Talk will be switching off week in to week out. The last 2 weeks, I've done In the Lab because there was so much information that I was just going to do isolated episodes for that segment, but I felt like I was cheating myself and cheating you guys as well by not talking about high school, college, and international. If I'm keeping up with it, I want you guys to keep up with it too, because this podcast is all about the inside of my mind. So with that being said, today we're going to still stick with In the Lab because there was a couple tournaments that took place over this last holiday weekend, and I kind of just want to spotlight some of those tournaments and talk a little bit about the prospects in those tournaments to you guys. So stay tuned for that segment at the end of this episode. It's called In the Lab. Now, before I get started, I just want to also say happy holidays to you guys. I hope you guys had a really good holiday, and let's make 2025 the year for the PJ Hoop podcast and all my followers out there. I wanted to thank all you guys as well for the support that I've gotten since I've started the pod up until this point. I know with you guys' help, this can really become something special, not just for myself, but also for you guys as well along this journey. Now, let's dive straight into it with the very first segment. Is PJ's Echelon. Now in PJ's Echelon, it's essentially my power rankings. That's all it is. But within that, it's not a perfect list, but it is a progressive list because I'm not a perfect man. I am a progressive man. And so I use 4 different parameters to determine my power rankings. I like to do eye test, strength of schedule, statistically where you sit, but also your team's record are the 4 things that I like to use. And just to keep in mind, before I start this, I want to let you guys know I'm recording this Tuesday, December 31st at about 12 p.m., so early afternoon. So just keep that in mind as we go through it, because obviously there are some games later tonight. Let's dive straight into it. I'm not going to waste any more time. And my very first team, number 1 this week, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma, right now, they're 26-5. They're 7th in offensive efficiency. They're 1st in defensive efficiency, and they're 1st in net rating. So technically, yes, they did lose to the Bucks during the NBA Cup, but that game doesn't count against them. So with that, they're on 11-game win streak right now, which is the longest in the NBA. I do feel really bad, though, because Chet's out. And before Chet got hurt, he was in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion. No doubt he was in the conversation, so I feel bad about that. Something I did want to point out to you guys, though, is that they're actually one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA right now. They're 22nd in percentage at 34.5%. They're 9th in attempts at 39 a game. So that's just something I wanted to throw out to you guys. But anyways, Oklahoma's crushing it right now. They're number 1 on my list for me. Number 2, this team is 23-9, and that is the Boston Celtics. Boston right now, they're third in offensive efficiency. They're ninth in defensive efficiency, and they're third in net rating. So I didn't move them down too much. I didn't move them down actually because yes, they split the 2 games with the Pacers, and it's hard to beat a team and a home and home. It's just hard to do that. So I didn't cream them. I didn't kill them for that because they won the first game. They lost the second game. Plus they've been playing without Drew Holiday for most of this stretch, and they missed Porzingis for a few games as well. So I didn't want to hold that over their head. So that's why I still got Boston at number 2. They still average the second fewest turnovers per game at 12 a game. They actually have a really tough road coming up. Their next 4 games are, pretty tough games, I would say. They play the Timberwolves, the Rockets, the Thunder, and the Nuggets. So that's something I'll be paying attention to, and we'll see if they move down after that stretch or not. But yeah, I still got Boston firmly at number 2. Number 3 on my list, this team is 28-4, and that is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland right now, they're first in offensive efficiency, they're 7th in defensive efficiency, and they're second in net rating. Sorry about that. So I didn't move them up because I felt like they had a pretty soft break in their schedule. They had a couple days off in between games. I think about 3-4 days off in between games, and they only played about 2 weeks over this. They only played about 2 games over this last week, so I didn't want to overreact and move them up to number 1 or even number 2 based on how soft their schedule has been because like I said, they didn't play that much this week. They're still dominating teams. They honestly we'll see what happens obviously as the season goes on, but if they continue on this stretch, they may have 3 All-Stars this year, to be honest with you guys. They're still first in field goal percentage at 50%. They're also first in 3-point percentage at 41%. This is a lethal offense. Shout out to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're number 3 this week on my list. Number 4 on my list. This team is 22-11, and that is the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis right now, they're 5th in offensive efficiency. They're 5th in defensive efficiency, and they're 4th in net rating. Memphis, I said it last week, they're still averaging using the pick and roll the fewest in the NBA. They only use it about a 7% clip per game, which is they only average about 7 points a game out of the pick and roll. If you didn't get a chance to see what I said last week about their offense and how it's a very unique and special type of offense that their old D3 coach, his name is Noah LaRoche, I think is his name. He brought that up this year. This was his first year being an assistant. He brought that offense up to Memphis. But Memphis very rarely uses the pick and roll. It's a lot of motion, like subtle motion too. So if you haven't got a chance to watch Memphis this year, I would go ahead and just pay attention to their offense. I personally like it. It's a very different type of offense. I really like it. They have the hardest remaining schedule in the NBA. And they're still the deepest team in basketball, in my opinion. G.G. Jackson's on his way. He's not that far away from being back. Memphis also is still number 1 in having the most missed games by players in the NBA, just like last year. This team has been decimated by injuries, but they're still doing one heck of a job. And I would say right now, Taylor Jenkins is in the firm top 3 for Coach of the Year this year. Number 5, this team is 20-13, and that is the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas right now, they're 6th in offensive efficiency. They're 11th in defensive efficiency, and they're 7th in net rating. So Luka's been out. Obviously, he's dealing with a calf strain, and you can't mess around with the calf strain because we all know what leads to an aggravated calf strain. It could potentially, become Achilles injury. So I understand why they're holding Luka out. Luka, I think, is going to be out for about the next month or so. And this is also in my preseason when I was telling you guys what teams I were picking to go out of the West, why I could not take Dallas. It was literally because of this. I said I didn't trust the health of Luka. I didn't trust the health of Kyrie, and I didn't trust the health of Klay Thompson. And this kind of just proves my point. But that doesn't take away from them. They're still winning about 75% of their games without Luka on the year. And so the month of January is going to be very interesting for this team, in my opinion, simply because 11 of their 16 games in January are against teams that are either playoff or play-in teams. So a tough stretch is coming for this team, and that's something I'll be paying attention to moving forward with Dallas. But Dallas comes in at number 5. Number 6 this week for me, this team is 23-10, and that is the New York Knicks. New York right now, they're 2nd in offensive efficiency. They're 13th in defensive efficiency, and they're 5th in net rating. So they won 8 straight games, which is the second longest streak in the NBA right now. They haven't really beat up. They beat up on the teams they're supposed to take care of, okay? They're not, if you look at their 8 wins, I don't have it in front of me, but they're not crazy, impressive wins, in my opinion. They have pretty soft games they won, but they still took care of business. So I didn't want to take away that from them, but I did move them up because they're taking care of business, This Friday is going to be interesting because they do play the Thunder, so that's something I'll for sure be paying attention to. They have the 3rd remaining toughest schedule in the NBA. So that's something to pay attention to. They're third in the NBA right now in field goal percentage at 50%. And they're third also in three-point percentage right now at 39%. This is a lethal offense. And I'm just waiting to see if this defense can pick up as the season progresses. Number 7 on my list. This team is 21-11, and that is the Houston Rockets. Houston right now, they're 11th in offensive efficiency. They're 2nd in defensive efficiency. They're 6th in net rating. So I moved them down a little bit, only about a spot. One, because I moved the Knicks up, but also they lost 2 games in a row. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They have the second hardest remaining schedule in the NBA, so that's something to be paying attention to. But this team is still full of menaces on defense. They're second in opponent's field goal percentage at 44%. They allow the second fewest threes per game at 35 attempts per game. So they're chasing teams off the 3-point line. They're third in opponents' points per game at 107. Shout out to the Houston Rockets. Shout out to Ime Udoka for the coaching job he's been doing up to this point in the season. If you want to hear me deep dive more about Houston, you go ahead and check out other episodes where I actually deep dive a little bit more on their offensive woes and what I think offensively is to come for this team. Number 8 on my list. This team is 20-14, and that is the Orlando Magic. Orlando right now, they are 26th in offensive efficiency. They're 3rd in defensive efficiency, and they're 10th in net rating. This team is just truly a pack of wolves, is the best way I like to call this year's Orlando team. They're down 3 of their top 4 scorers with Paolo, Franz, and Mo all being out. But this team, it's always next man up. And you got to love what Jamal Mosley is doing right now in Orlando. He's doing one heck of a coaching job. P5 is on his way. I've been saying this for 3 weeks now, but I know we're getting closer and closer to his return. So I keep wanting to give a shout out to that and keep that on you guys' mind. They're averaging, they're fourth in the 3rd most turnovers per game at 17. They are the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA at 31%. I'll say it again. Go get Anthony Simons for the Blazers. They should be able to get him for a fairly good price. I would say maybe 2 first-round picks and one of their young players, maybe like Anthony Black or somebody. Go get Anthony Simons. You guys need some more scoring down in Orlando. Number 9 on my list. This team is 18-13, and that is the Denver Nuggets. Denver right now, they're 4th in offensive efficiency. They're 19th in defensive efficiency, and they're 8th in net rating. So they lost, obviously, to Phoenix, but that was a back-to-back, so I didn't hold that over their head. They played Phoenix twice, but then they lost to the Cavs a couple of days ago, but the Cleveland Cavaliers have 4 days off leading up to that game. So, again, I didn't want to kill Denver for that. They still were, they put up points, so they had 135, but Cleveland scored the most points at Ball Arena without an overtime game. They scored 149 points against Denver. I still think Denver's biggest problem is their defense. A lot of people was trying to say they needed more offense, but I don't think that's their problem. I still think it's defensively is their biggest problem. I thought it was really funny also in the preseason, people were doubting Denver, but they're 4th in three-point percentage at 38%. They do take the fewest amount of threes per game at 31, but that doesn't take away from their percentage. They're also 1st in assists in the NBA, and they're 2nd in field goal percentage. They use the pick and roll, the 2nd fewest as well, at only about 12% per game. I got Denver firmly still at number 9 this week. Number 10 this week. And still number 10, this team is 19-13, and that is the LA Clippers. LA, they're 22nd in offensive efficiency. They're 4th in defensive efficiency, and they're 9th in net rating. Kawhi is set to return. I talked a little bit about it last week. I thought he was going to return sometime this week. Looks like he's slated to return January 4th, which is in a couple of days. He practiced in the G League over the weekend. They are 4th in opponents' three-point percentage at 34%. They're 5th in opponents' points per game as well at about 107 per game. They're 3rd in opponents' free throw percentage at 76. The wall is working. Shout out to Steve Ballmer there. They do allow the 4th most steals against them at 10. So you play against the Clippers, you're going to get steals against them. They're kind of a little sloppy team. Ty Lue deserves his flowers for what he's done this coaching job this year, having them as a top 5 defense this year, and also just steadying the ship without Kawhi. But also shout out to Norman Powell for stepping up. He's having an all-star-like season, in my opinion. So shout out to them. And my teams on the bubble, I want to give you guys my teams on the bubble. So right now I have Milwaukee Steals on the bubble for me. They've been on the bubble for about a month and a half. I just still haven't seen enough from them for me to feel comfortable enough moving them up. But also Minnesota, they dropped down. They're in the bubble now for me. Minnesota has 2 games coming up against the Thunder and the Celtics that kind of let us know what what they're truly about. But the Bucks have been without Dame and Giannis in and out the lineup the last 2 weeks, so I just don't feel comfortable moving them up. Now, down in the comment section below, you guys let me know who's in your power rankings. Who do you have in your top 10? Who do you have on your bubble? Let me know down in the comment section below. My next segment is a segment I like to call What's New. Now, What's New, it's me either ranting, give you some type of NBA news, or some type of NBA history or statistical history that may have happened over this last week. I just want to dive straight into it with you guys. I'm not going to waste any more time. So Boston becomes the first team in the NBA history to make 500 threes in their first 30 games. Mind you guys, they're taking 50 threes a game. So, I mean, nothing too crazy, but still something I wanted to point out to you guys. Thursday, the day after Christmas, was nuts. We had 4 buzzer beaters during that day. Tyler Hero hit a game winner. Jordan Poole hit a game winner. Scoot Henderson hit a game winner. And then somebody else hit a game winner. Who was it? Oh, Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey hit a 4-point play. That was a game winner as well. Shea scored 45 points that day, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, they won their 9th game that day. The Hawks, they had 50 points in the 4th quarter, and they had a comeback. That's actually one of my games of the week. I'll talk about that later on. The Grizzlies that same day scored an NBA high for the season at 155 points. That's also a franchise record for them. Thursday was just a nuts day. On Christmas, Tyrese Maxey became the first 76er to have 30 and 10 on Christmas Day. Shout out to Tyrese Maxey. So I also talked about this literally when the NBA schedule came out. I literally said the game on Christmas that I was looking forward to the most was Wembanyama going up against the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden. And it was literally because of what I said that day. And I'm going to say it again right now. Victor, I knew it. Usually with NBA superstars, before they become superstars or we like announce them or them pronounce it like I'm here, they usually have a big game at MSG. We usually see that out of players. And I had a feeling that Christmas Day might have been that day for Wemby, and he didn't disappoint at all. On Christmas Day, he scored the 3rd most points on a player's debut on Christmas Day. He finished with 42. He's only trailing Wilt and Tracy McGrady. He was the first player in NBA history on Christmas Day to score 40 points and have 15 rebounds and 5 threes on Christmas. So that's something I just wanted to point out to you guys because I remember I literally said it when the NBA schedule released during the summer. You can go back and check out that episode if you don't believe me, but I said it. I was like, Christmas Day is probably, usually is when an NBA player announces that they're here. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys. Also, the Kings reportedly, they fired Mike Brown. I don't want to talk too much about that. Just wanted to point that out to you guys. Shout out to Isaiah Hartenstein as well. He became an investor in the ULM club, which is a German basketball team. Right now, if you guys don't know who ULM is right now, they're just a basketball team over in Europe. But players right now on ULM, I've talked about both of them, Ben Sarif and then Noah Essenjun. They both play over there right now. These are players that are going to be in the NBA next year. They're going to be NBA, maybe not necessarily lottery picks, maybe not both of them, but I'm pretty sure one of them will be a lottery pick. But they're for sure first rounders. So yeah, shout out to Isaiah Hartenstein for investing in them. Trae Young becomes the 2nd youngest player in NBA history to reach 11,000 points and 4,000 career assists. The only player to do it younger was LeBron James. The NBA delivered the most watched games on Christmas Day in 5 years. The viewership was up 84% year over year across ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus. The NBA Christmas Day average was about 5.2 million viewers in the U.S. The matchup between the Lakers and the Warriors generated the most views, of course, in Christmas Day in the last 5 years. Their average view was about 7.7 million, and it peaked at about 8.3 million on Christmas Day. Klay Thompson passed Reggie Miller for the 5th most three-pointers made in NBA history. Steph Curry tied the NBA record for most threes made on Christmas Day at 8. For the 2nd time this season, the Hornets and Bulls tied for the NBA record for most combined missed threes in a game at 75. The Lakers traded D'Angelo Russell, Maxwell Lewis, and 3 second-round picks to Brooklyn for Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton. His name is Neil Genta. I think I pronounced his last name wrong. Maybe not. He departed the Denver Nuggets front office to become the new general manager of the Illinois men's basketball team. Yes, you guys heard me, general manager. I I believe that we're going to start seeing that more often in college and college football and college basketball. I think we're going to see the idea of a general manager come in to play more times than not, just because of the NIL thing. So that's just the NBA news. Now, down in the comment section below, you guys let me know of any news that you guys want to speak on. In my In the Lab segment today, I'll also be talking about more news, but that's going to be more towards college, high school, and international. So stay tuned for that. Down in the comment section below, again, let me know what is some news that you guys wanted to share. And obviously, there's more news that I could share, but I just don't want to make these episodes too long for you guys. So now my next segment on the blocks is Games of the Week. Now, in Games of the Week, essentially, I'm just giving you games of some type of significance or games that I really enjoyed watching. Obviously, yes, there's tens of games going on week in and week out, and I don't want to spend all my time on my podcast talking about that. So I try to choose about 2 to 3 games a week. This week, I'm doing no Christmas Day games because I just feel like I wanted to challenge myself a little bit more and not choose Christmas Day games. Christmas Day games were very, very good. I mean, if you didn't get to watch any of them, I would go back and at least watch the highlights if you get a chance. Very great games on Christmas. Some of the best Christmas Day games we've seen in a while. So shout out to the NBA for that. But the 2 games I chose today, the first one is the Hawks versus the Bulls. The Hawks won the game 141-133, and this took place the day after Christmas on December 26th. I chose this game. I'm not a big fan of high-scoring games, but I chose this game because Atlanta had one of the best fourth quarters we've ever seen. They had 50 points in the fourth with only 1 turnover. They ended the game on a 34-9 run in the last 6 minutes and 20 seconds of the game. And so I had to choose that. Literally, Chicago went up from being up 17 to down 5, and they had 2 timeouts. They didn't use a single timeout, which I thought was very poor coaching. But also, Jalen Johnson, in my opinion, is the front runner for most improved player of the year. Not only because I had him on my ballot, but also because he's on pace to potentially do something that's never been done by an NBA forward before. So he would become the youngest NBA forward in history to average 20 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block a game. So that's why I got him slightly over Norman Powell. But if Norman Powell won, so be it. But I think Jalen Johnson deserves it because he's doing something that's never been done. So that's why I chose that game, because Atlanta had one of the best fourth quarters we've ever seen. My other game on the list, this is the Timberwolves versus the Spurs. The Timberwolves won this game 112-110. And I chose this game specifically because the matchup of Wembanyama versus Anthony Edwards, yes, they play different positions, but these are 2 guys that are going to be jawing for, best play, I would say face of the league for years to come. And they're ultra competitive guys, and I like both of their personalities. So I chose that game because of that as well. But also I kind of wanted to just talk about the teams too a little bit as well. Obviously, yes, the Timberwolves won this game. The Spurs, I think, are kind of in that phase where they're at that point now where they're learning how to win close games and what that looks like and how it feels to be in close games. Typically, this usually doesn't come for young teams until about year 3 or 4, but Wembanyama has kind of expedited the process a little bit for the Spurs. And so, of course, the Timberwolves a little bit more vetted team. They've been there, done that a little bit more. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm yawning. But yeah, so I think this game kind of screamed that. Jeremy Sohan made a very bad read. At the end of the game, they had a chance to, I believe, either win or tie the game. But he ended up taking the 3 instead of kicking it to the corner to Harrison Barnes, where Harrison Barnes during that game was shooting about 3 for 4 from 3. So I don't know why Jeremy felt like he wanted to be Mr. Hero, but he bricked it very bad at the end of the game. But I also wanted to talk about Victor Wembanyama a little bit because obviously, they've already started it. They're already trying to push this MVP narrative for him. I think right now they got him top 5 on the MVP ladder, which it just depends how you view it. I don't think he should be top 5 necessarily right now because the team's record's not that good. But I can understand why, because what he's averaging is, he's doing his thing. But you could already see the narrative building. Next year, they might have him as the favorite next year to win MVP, to be real with you guys. And I think it's partly because LeBron, I've been saying it since the summer, I think LeBron's last year is next year because the All-Star game is going to be in LA. So why not, make it all about LeBron for that All-Star weekend in LA? It just makes sense. But Victor Wembanyama, back to Victor, I think next year he's for sure going to be, they're going to have him top 3 preseason for MVP voting because they want to start, usually when the face of the NBA, when they're on their way out, the new one they usually push that face of the NBA a lot harder. And they're going to do that next year, I think, with Victor as LeBron leaves. So that's just something I kind of wanted to point out to you guys. But also, I think Devin Vassell can be a number 3 option on a championship team. But him as your number 2, which he somewhat is the number 2 right now for the Spurs, I don't think that's enough. I'm interested to see if Stephon Castle can become the number 2. I don't know if necessarily he can, but we'll see if he can, but I just want to throw that out there to you guys because I think the Spurs obviously need to figure out who's going to be their number 2 guy because I think Vassell can be the number 3. And if Castle's not going to become your number 2, I think Castle is a very solid number 4 or potentially number 3, depending what he becomes. But so this upcoming draft is going to be very telling for the Spurs to see if they can find their number 2 guy in this draft. Obviously, they're winning quite a bit of games, so their draft position is probably not going to be that great. But I'm interested to see what happens with the Spurs because I still think they're at least a player away to find out who's going to be that secondary all-star to Victor's all-NBA, who's going to be that second guy to him. But also I want to talk about the Timberwolves slightly. I think the Timberwolves right now, they're at the beginning of their third phase with Anthony Edwards. So typically in my opinion, NBA teams, when they get a superstar, there's 3 phases with that superstar that commences. Okay. So like, for example, with, a team like the Bucks, for example, when Giannis first got there, it was him and Middleton. And then it went him and Middleton and Drew. Obviously, they won a title. But now this phase of the Bucks, it's Giannis and Dame, right? And obviously, if this phase doesn't work out, Giannis is out of there. You can say that with other players like Luka. Luka's another one where it goes in phases. His first phase was, I would say, with Jalen Brunson. This second phase was with Kyrie Irving. And now the third phase is right now with him, Kyrie, and Klay Thompson, I would say, is the third phase of the Dallas Mavericks. And we'll see what happens with that. And then we'll see if Luka ends up leaving or he stays there, okay? But anyways, I feel like the Timberwolves are in their third phase. First phase was Anthony Edwards and Cat. Second phase was Anthony Edwards, Cat, and Gobert. And now the third phase, I think, is Anthony Edwards, Gobert, and either Julius Randle, which I'm assuming they're probably going to extend him, but we'll see if they extend him this summer. Or it's going to be Anthony Edwards, Gobert, and Little Rob Dillingham because obviously they drafted him. They moved up to grab him, so I'm assuming they consider him a franchise cornerstone to some capacity. And next year, he's probably going to start or get really heavy minutes starting next year because I think next year is Mike Conley's last year with the Timberwolves, in my opinion. He's old, too. Conley's like 37. But anyways, I kind of just wanted to point it to you guys. I think Minnesota's getting ready to start their third phase, and then after the third phase, Anthony Edwards is out of there. And honestly, to be real with you guys, he's probably out of there regardless. But I still just wanted to point that out there to you guys that I think Minnesota's entering their third phase with this team. Now, you guys down in the comment section below, you guys let me know what 2 games or 3 games did you guys really like this week. Again, I could sit here and give you guys 4, 5, 7, 8 different games, but I don't want these episodes to be too long. I'm trying to keep them between 25 and 35 minutes. But anyways, you guys let me know down in the comment section below what games did you really enjoy this week. My last segment is a segment I like to call In the Lab. Now, in this segment, essentially, it's me giving you guys some type of information about college, high school, or international. Today, we're going to talk quite a bit about some high school basketball because there was about 3 different tournaments that happened over this holiday weekend. There was the Jordan Holiday Classic, there was the Damian Classic, and then there was the City of Palms tournament as well. So I kind of just wanted to talk about some of that stuff in those 3 tournaments, okay? So we'll start it right off. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to Mater Day's junior. His name is Luke Barnett. He broke the school record for 3-pointers in only 3 quarters. Mind you guys, he scored 55 points. He shot 12 of 22 from 3. Yes, and that was in 3 quarters. Another thing that ended up happening was the Boozer Twins in Columbus. They ended up winning the City of Palms championship 59-57 over Montverde. So shout out to Columbus and the Boozer Twins. Some news that ended up happening was Jim Laurinega of the Miami Hurricanes college basketball team. He ended up retiring. So shout out to him. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jaleel Bethy. Which was a 5-star shooting guard recruit. He goes to University of Miami. He doesn't get much playing time, so I'm gonna be keeping my eyes on to see what happens with him this year because he was one of my preseason top 30 people that I was gonna be keeping my eyes on. Another 5-star recruit. He's the number 2 point guard in class of 2026, Jason Crow Jr. and Elijah Arenas put on a scoring masterclass against one another. Crow and Inglewood came out on top, 88-84 at the Damian Classic. He ended up having 55 points. Elijah Arenas finished with 34 points in that game. I would have liked to see Elijah kind of guarding guarding Jason a little bit more in that game. But shout out to Jason Crow and Elijah Arena in their battle during that game. So during the Jordan Classic, there was some pretty high-level kids coming up in the recruiting trail that were involved in that tournament. Just want to give some highlights to the Boozer twins. Cameron and Caden was involved. His name was Adrian Stevens, Cam Fleming, Jake Bailey, Jacoby Coleman, Caden Mingo, and that's in class of 2025. Now, some of the kids in class of 26 that was involved in this tournament was Caleb Gaskin, Darius Ratliff, David Gamon, Deron Rippey, Dylan Mingo, Jaden Hodge, Jackson Richardson, Prince Alexander Moody. So that tournament, the Jordan Holiday Classic, was loaded with prospects in there. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that. And lastly, I also want to give a shout out to Braden Berries. He's a 6'4", number 2 shooting guard in class of 2025. He has not committed to anywhere yet, but he was cooking and he won the MVP actually at the Damien Classic. He led his team to the title, and in that championship game, he had 24 and 10, but he won the MVP, so I wanted to give a shout out to him. But also, I really wanted to take this episode. I really wanted to go over some of my preseason top 30 prospects that I told you guys I was going to be keeping my eyes on and give you kind of give you guys just an update on where they are statistically in the season and just a brief, like what I've briefly have gotten from them. But I don't really have enough time. So what I'll do next week, I won't give you guys any college or high school news or talk about NBA rookies. We'll spend some time and go over those top 10 prospects. The 10 that I'll be talking about next week, I'll give you their names. One is Igor Damon of BYU, Kasparis Yakachonis of Illinois, Derek Queen of Maryland, Trey Johnson of Texas, Khan Knipple of Duke, Kamen Malawach of Duke, Will Riley of Illinois, Asai Noel of Georgia, and then Noah Essenjun of the ULM German national team or German national club, and then also Ben Sarif of the same team, the ULM. So I'll be talking about those 10 prospects next week, and then we'll keep chopping down and going through my other top 20. So obviously these are not top 10 prospects that I think are like the best 10, but these are just 10. I did 30 during my episode 16 episode where I just gave you 30 prospects that I would just keep my eyes on in college. But then also I gave you 10 prospects internationally that I would be keeping my eyes on internationally. Okay, with that being the case, thank you for checking out my episode. And I'll see you guys next week. And also, how you guys have a happy New Year's and happy holidays. And PJ's out.